Okay, so 1 Kings 12 through 20, 2 Chronicles 9 through 17 are pretty well parallel passages. This is the kingdom is divided due to Rehoboam's harsh leadership. And the kings of Israel and Judah either followed God or they turned into idolatry. I mean, those are the two things that happened, right? And there's lots of detail in there. I'm giving general overview here. And their decisions impacted the kingdoms, right? So the kingdoms of the north and Israel were always considered to be evil. And most of the ones in the south in Judah were considered evil. There were some good ones here and there. But pretty much it followed the way that Solomon ended up going, and that is to depart from God. And sometimes it was very quickly. So God was able to do some things, work with the people, but he still had to, there was the idea of the remnant. The remnant theology, the remnant idea really is going to come into play when they went into captivity. But the idea is still present all throughout the scriptures. It's always been the case that there are only a few who are going to find it, right? There's only going to be a few who decide to follow God. And we need to make sure that we're part of that few and not get distracted and not let the people who are also considered the people of God keep us from actually being the people of God. And what I mean by that, of course, is that there's plenty of people in the world who call themselves Christians. There's plenty of people in the church who consider themselves strong and faithful, but they may not be. And so what we have to do is recognize situations and recognize sometimes that people are on a journey and they may not be where they think they are on the journey. And so we might need to help them, and we also need to be careful, cautious, even around each other. And I don't mean that we should walk around suspecting each other, but we have to be careful and take care of ourselves. So I wanted to bring this up in this section. I know I very quickly overviewed it, but are there any passages that popped up you think, hey, this would be good to talk about, or why did this happen, or anything like that? We're almost done with 1 Kings. 1 Kings 12 through 20 or 2 Chronicles 9 through 17. What was the reason that Rehoboam was so harsh in his answer when the people requested that he go easy on them? Why would he respond the way he did? He got bad advice, but why would he take that advice? Yeah, it's probably just ego. Just he wanted to feel power, and he had power, and he wanted to exercise it. And that's kind of, it's like I've never done this for obvious reasons, but if you ever was handed the keys to a Lamborghini and they said, it's yours, do you think you're going to go the speed limit the first time you drive it? I mean, human nature says you're not going to. Because we're going to test that thing out a little bit, right? I'm not saying that's right, but we do that. And we just want to see where are the limits, right? We want to find our limits. And kids do this with the parents, and we do this with God. We want to find our limits. And so we push the boundaries as much as we can. And human nature is that way. And the more we grow in Christ, the more we realize that we shouldn't be pushing those boundaries. We should be staying away from the boundaries. The boundaries are there to protect us, but we need to not see how close we can get to the boundaries, right? And so we have to walk that narrow way, yeah. I keep saying your hand go up, so.
A favorite saying was the founding fathers. And that's why we have the government we have today. Absolute power corrupts absolute.
Yeah.
It's a function of human nature, and you just described it.
Yeah, it's a function of human nature. And with a king, what kind of power did the king of Israel have?
All powerful.
That's the way they presented themselves, yeah. But who was their leader? God. So they had power within the realm and within the structure that God had assigned for them, right? And so they could make decrees, they could do all kinds of things, but they were very limited by what God said. And so a lot of the kings didn't like that idea. They're like, I'm king, I'm going to do what I want to do. And they did. And they learned that it's possible to do things that God doesn't want. And we learned that pretty quickly too. But that doesn't mean that it's smart. That doesn't mean it's right, obviously. So that set the stage for Jeroboam. And Jeroboam, son of Nebat, is the one who set up the two cities, right? And what were the two cities? Yeah. Dan and Bethel. I knew Dan was one because it's from Dan to Beersheba, but Bethel was the other one. And these were places where he set up altars and said, you don't need to go to Jerusalem, you come in here worship. So he changed everything. And why did he, first of all, the question should be asked, is it wrong to worship God in places that God has not authorized today? There is no such thing. There's no place that God has authorized for worship. But with them, they were told to worship in Jerusalem. Right? So everyone had to come to Jerusalem. Wherever the Ark of the Covenant was, that's where everyone was supposed to gather. So he saw that as an opportunity for the people of the northern tribes to say, hey, maybe we need to go back to what we were before. He saw it as a threat, so he set up these two places and made it convenient for them to go there and say, hey, these are your new gods. This is what you're going to be worshiping, and this is where you're going to worship. And so he did it strategically at the same times as the times that they would have gone to worship in Jerusalem. And I think that's right anyway. So, if I remember correctly. So the idea was we're going to replace what God wants with something else. And they're still saying, we can still say, oh, we're worshiping God, but we're just doing it in a different place. And it's easier to sell that way, right? The Catholics did that. I don't know if you realize that. They would go into cultures and adopt the cultural things, traditions, and make them Christian and say, okay, we're going to do this now. This is what y'all been doing for centuries. We're just going to say it's a function of Christianity now. That way you can do it easier, and you'll be worshiping our God, and you can continue keeping your traditions and this kind of thing. I know it's a little bit different, but it's similar. It's essentially the same thing. So we see this in, repeated all throughout history. And we see this also with the kings. They continued in Israel. One of the reasons that they were all evil kings was because they kept up that same charade. They continued to have people coming to those different places, to Bethel and Dan, for worship. And this is essentially or eventually where the idea of the Samaritans came from. There's a lot of history there, and it's not as simple as I just stated it. But the Samaritans were part of this, and this is one of the reasons in John chapter 4 that the woman at the well asked, okay, we say we worship God here on this mountain, and you say you worship in Jerusalem. That's where that question came from. It's because they'd been doing it for so long. And so her question was, where's the right place to worship? And that's when he said, it's not where you worship anymore. It's who you worship and how you worship, right? God wants us to worship in spirit and in truth. Okay, so there's the ideas. Any other thoughts about any of these? We also have the introduction of Elijah and other prophets who were confronting the wicked leaders of the time. So God continued to try to bring his people back in spite of the leadership that was there. And the main theme of both of these sections, if you want to put them together, would be that the impact of leadership on spiritual and political well-being of the nation. The spiritual well-being of the nation always affects the political well-being of the nation. There's just no way around it. And that has always been the case, and it's the case with us as well. So the spirituality of this country is what determines our standing in a sense with God. I'm not saying that we can, as a nation, that we can be saved as a country. But God does expect for all the nations of the earth to abide by the principles that he's taught in the Bible. He's always expected that. And the closer we are to those principles, the more success we're going to have and the better the rule is going to be. The further away we get, the more chaos and disruption comes, and we're seeing a lot of that right now. This is what it looks like for society to unravel, and we're seeing it ourselves. And it's taking a long time. And one of the reasons it's taking so long is because of the foundation that was set at the beginning. It's still there, even though it's being eroded, it's still there to a great extent. And we need to try to get back to it. So I don't want to talk about politics, but it is an important idea that politics is the political rule, in my opinion, is how we function as a society, as a whole people, right? This is the policies that we all try to follow. And so the closer we can get to God's word in that, the better off we are. And this is where we have so many problems with people coming in and say they want to completely divide religion and God. I mean, religion and or God and country, right? And to an extent, I understand what they're saying. But I tell you what, in high school, I was taught by some teachers, and one of the things I heard many times and started repeating was, you cannot legislate morality. I don't know how many times I've heard that. But then it hit me one day, murder is morality, right? Everything we do, almost all of our laws revolve around morality in some way. The fact is what they're saying is you can't legislate morality that I disagree with. That's what they're saying. And so we have to have a standard, and the standard has to be agreed upon by everyone in order for it to work, because we all vote in the people who are going to make the laws. Well, if we all are divided in our morality, then of course we're going to vote in people that are going to be chaotic in how much they... So the more we as a people learn and understand and apply the principles of morality that are in the Word and following God, the more we're going to have agreement, and the more our leaders will actually follow, hopefully, what we want, right? That's the way it works. And so I agree that that we need to have people in office who are godly, but I don't know if that's possible with the current culture. I'm not saying it's always impossible, but I don't know if it's possible, because if they're running on godly principles, they probably won't be voted in, and because of the chaos that's in this country. So, in my opinion, the best alternative that we have is to help people turn back to God. That's the only way that we're going to save our country. And then we can have perhaps godly leaders who are elected through the due process and start making a difference. Yeah.
Y'all heard me make this comment before. David Lipscomb was a very godly man and a very devout Christian. He did an enormous amount of good for the Lord's church. But he was a man, and being a man, he could be an error.
Mm-hmm.
And what he taught and what he preached was that as a Christian you could not participate in civil government.
Right.
And the flaw with that logic is any group, if you remove all the Christians from it, you immediately turn it over to the devil.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
Okay, and what we're seeing in the country today, I think it goes all the way back to whenever David Lipscomb started preaching and teaching what he did. Because up until that point, there were some very godly men in Washington.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I was happy to hear that, I don't know which state, but the education department apparently, they're putting the Ten Commandments back in the schools,
Mm-hmm.
and they say several states have gone along with that, so maybe people are going to...
It's a symbolic step in a good direction, I think. Yeah. I don't know how much impact it's going to have, but it might be neat to hear for people to hear, hey, you shouldn't murder people, right? Reading through the Ten Commandments every now and then, it might be good for them to hear every now and then. Yeah, but yeah, it's a good point. All right, so Proverbs, moving on, Proverbs 30 and 31, we have two men, Agur in chapter 30, who basically is talking about human limitations and God's infinite wisdom. He's talking about integrity and contentment and the purity of God's word. And then in 31, we have King Lemuel, and he gives advice on the qualities of a wise ruler, describes the characteristics of a virtuous woman, and we're going to look at on Wednesday, Lord willing. The main themes are seeking wisdom, living in integrity, and honoring God in all aspects of our lives. So we don't really know who Agur and King Lemuel are. There's a lot of debate and a lot of ideas. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's always been accepted as part of the book of Proverbs, and so there's not any question really about the authenticity of it. We just don't know who these people are. It's possible that they are not even Hebrew. It's because of the names, but since we don't really know, it's really kind of pointless to speculate too much. If it really mattered, we could speculate, but it doesn't really, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. We have all kinds of, Job wasn't really Jewish either, but that was actually, I think he was actually pre-Abraham, but still. But there's still quite a bit there, and anybody have any questions about that section? Proverbs 30 and 31. All right, so let's go into 2 Chronicles chapter 14. This is about King Asa and his reforms. We're going to look at chapters 14 and 15. And things that are actually through 16 too. Where did it go? Oh, yeah. So we're going to look 14 through 16 and see some of the highlights of what he's doing. So the reforms come in chapter 14, verses 2 through 5. It says, Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God, for he removed the altars of the foreign gods in the high places and broke down the sacred pillars and cut down the wooden images. He commanded Judah to seek the Lord God of their fathers and to observe the law and the commandment. He also removed the high places and the incense altars from all the cities of Judah, and the kingdom was quiet under him. And he built fortified cities in Judah, for the land had rest. He had no war in those years because the Lord had given him rest. And it goes on a little bit further. So now we have a great reform that comes at his hands, and he took down the altars of the foreign gods and the high places and broke down the sacred pillars. That's verse 3. That's huge. This shows how things had gone bad, but these are the high places and things were finally taken care of and taken out. And this is not extremely uncommon for this to happen in any of the kings. And the sacred pillars and the wooden images, all these things are related to deities in the region. And it's significant because the deities in the region were being worshipped because the people of God didn't drive out the inhabitants like they were told to do. And because of that, they had consequences of the influences there. It's almost inevitable that if you don't get out the sin and the sinful activities, that it's going to influence you sooner or later. It's just how things work. And so we're always fighting against it, right? But I'm not saying it's a losing battle, but the tendency is it's just a matter of time. If it's not you, it's your children or family or somebody like that. And so it's amazing to me that I've seen people, and of course we all do this to a certain degree, but we have things in our lives that we think, oh, I've got this under control, and our kids may not have any way of processing and making it so where they can control it. And so our children may suffer, or other people may suffer because of our decisions, our really stupidity is what it is. But anyway, he has these reforms. And then if you look in verses 9 through 15, he has this great victory over the Cushites, and that's important because of later information. It says in verse 9, Zerah the Ethiopian came out against them with an army of 1,000,000 men and 300 chariots, and he came to Marishah. So Asa went out against him, and they set the troops in battle array in the valley of Zephathah. at Morishah. And Asa cried out to the Lord his God and said, Lord, it is nothing for you to help, whether with many or with those who have no power. Help us, O Lord, our God, for we rest on you, and in your name we go against the multitude. O Lord, you are our God. Do not let man prevail against you. So the Lord struck the Ethiopians before Asa and Judah, and the Ethiopians fled. And Asa and the people who were with him pursued them to Gerar. So the Ethiopians were overthrown, and they could not recover, for they were broken before the Lord and his army, and they carried away very much spoil. Then they defeated all the cities around Gerar, for the fear of the Lord came upon them, and they plundered all the cities that were exceedingly much spoil in them, for there was exceedingly much spoil in them. They also attacked the livestock enclosures and carried off sheep and camels in abundance, and then returned to Jerusalem. So this is a big battle, and of course, we're talking about the southern tribe, right? So we're talking about one of the tribes, and just looking at the armies that were calculated or counted in the past, we don't know how many are here at this point, but they were not a massive, huge people. And at least Judah wasn't. Judah was one of the bigger tribes, but it was not by itself. So there may have been 500,000 people in the whole army when it was first counted, and I'm sure Solomon added even more to that and things. So it's reasonable to expect hundreds of thousands of people in Judah, perhaps, but they're facing a group of 1 million men, and 300 chariots seems like a small amount with that many men, but a chariot can do a lot of damage, right? And so it's iron, and it can be pulled by a horse, of course, so there's intimidation factors. There's also, they have these wheels that have things sticking out of them sometimes. It could mow people down. All kinds of things could be done on these things, and they're relatively safe on that chariot. They can just stab people with spears and all kinds of things. So those things were like our tanks, and that has a significant emotional toil, I'm sure, on a battlefield when you see a horse and a chariot coming at you and you're on your feet. But here he's calling out for God to save him. And what is the basis of the fact that, the basis of his request? That he knew God could take care of the multitude. Yeah, definitely. And notice verse 11. What did he say? It's nothing. Look at the last sentence. Yeah. It's not, the appeal was not, they're going to hurt us. It's, he is fighting, don't let man prevail against you. So how did he see this conflict? It was between him, between God and these people. And that's the way it's always been seen at least for the godly leaders that were there. And this is not, I don't think it's we could interpret that as, well, it's my God against your God. But I don't think it's that. I think it's, if the people of God are defeated, that shows that God is not as powerful as they thought that he was. You remember when Moses wanted to destroy all the Israelites in the wilderness, and God also at one point as well said the same thing. He said, Moses, get out of the way. I'm going to kill all these people and start over. And Moses wanted him to do the same thing as well at other points. But what was it that Moses said to God to convince him, so to speak, not to do that? Yeah, look at the image, the impression you're making, right, on the people around. They're all going to think that you're weak. You brought them out here and couldn't bring them to the promised land. Well, that's making an impact on the image of God. And I don't think that that's a petty thing that Moses was saying to try to manipulate God. I mean, I can't imagine that. But it was a truthful thing that he's bringing up, and it's logical. And my suspicions is in that case, God is allowing Moses to think through this and to realize, okay, we don't want to kill these people. there are good reasons for us to just continue on doing what we should be doing and stay the course. And so Moses actually decided, hey, it'd be better not to do this, right? It'd be better not to kill these people. And he moved on because of the images that it produces. And also, so 2 Chronicles 14 relates to that too. All right. Any other thoughts? We also have then chapter 15, and this is Azariah's prophecy. There's some discussion or dispute, it's really not a big deal, of who is actually making the prophecy and how many prophecies there were. It says in verse 1, the Spirit of God came upon Azariah, the son of Oded. But if you look actually in, verse 8, when Asa, it says, now your translation may say something different, but mine says, when Asa heard these words in the prophecy of Oded the prophet, he took courage and removed the abominable idols from all the land of Judah and Benjamin, from the cities which he had taken the mountain of Ephraim. So the question is, was it Azariah who made the prophecy, or was it Oded that made the prophecy? And there are a lot of alternatives. My footnote here says there's some translations or some versions that say Azariah the son of Oded. So some people believe it was a transcribal error, a scribal error where they left out Azariah's name. But it's possible that both Oded and his son were prophets, and they both were prophesying about this. It's also possible that Oded was the prophet and sent Azariah with the message of the prophecy, and vice versa, I suppose. So we don't really know, but it is a little bit of a discrepancy. Then nobody really understands what happened. But we do know that the prophecy was made. So let's look at here in this first 8 verses. In verse 2, it says, he went out to meet Asa and said to him, "Hear me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you while you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. For a long time, Israel has been without the true God, without a teaching priest, and without law. But when in their trouble they turned to the Lord God of Israel and sought him, he was found by them. And in those times there was no peace to the one who went out, nor to the one who came in. But great turmoil was on all the inhabitants of the land. So nation was destroyed by nation, and city by city, for God troubled them with every adversity. But you, be strong, and do not let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded." And then when he heard these things, he took courage and removed the abominable idols from all the land. So this is the encouragement that he got that pushed him to this great reform, or at least to continue the great reform that he'd already started. And he's doing all kinds of things in the land of Judah and Benjamin. And he restored the altar of the Lord that was before the vestibule of the Lord. So that means the altar had even been in disrepair for whatever reasons. And so this is what do you make of this prophecy that he's saying? What is generally the idea here? Yeah, he's telling it's a good analogy, like Joseph telling him to be strong, or Joshua is what I was thinking. Yeah. Joshua. Is that what you meant too? Yeah. I got your mind, man. Yeah, Joshua was saying, do not be afraid. That's right. I like what he says here in verse 2. The Lord is with you while you're with him. You know, it's like Joshua when he saw the angel of the Lord and he said, who are you for or against? He said, I'm the angel of the Lord. And, this is it's not a for or against. It's we're on God's side. It's not that he's on our side. It's we choose to be with him. We align ourselves with him and his values and his teaching and his desires, and that's how he's on our side, so to speak. Of course, we have great support, but that support is only as long as we are with him, and we kind of get it backwards sometimes. I'm such a great person, God. Of course, God's going to bless me. We kind of get that attitude, even though we wouldn't say it out loud. We kind of get that attitude sometimes, or I've seen it. Okay, all right. That's prophecy, and then we have in chapter 16 his failure. that is the first 12 verses. In this 36th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, came up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might let none go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa brought silver and gold from the treasury of the house of the Lord and the king's house, and sent to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, who dwelt in Damascus, saying, Let there be a treaty between you and me, as there was between my father and your father. Say, I sent you silver and gold. Come break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, so that he will withdraw from me. So Ben-Hadad, heeded King Asa, and sent the captains of his armies against the cities of Israel, and they attacked Ijon, Dan, Abel-Maim, and all the storage cities of Naphtali. And it happened when Baasha heard it, that he stopped building Ramah and ceased his work. Then King Asa took all Judah, and they carried away the stones and timber of Ramah, which Baasha had used for building, and with them he built Geba and Mizpah. All right, let's stop there for a second. What's happening here in the situation? First of all, who is we have Baasha, king of Israel. What is he doing against Judah? That'd be verse 1. So, yeah, he's building up this city of Ramah. So it's a strategic move for him, and he's now able to control the traffic that's going to and from Jerusalem. This is going to be, it's a threat. It's also probably giving him ability to take things from people. He's definitely a threat in that area. And now Asa is concerned about this. So what did he do? Asa took gold and silver from the treasuries of the house of the Lord and of the king's house, and sent to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, who dwelt in Damascus. Damascus was further north, on the other side of Israel. So he convinced Ben-Hadad to start attacking the northern part of Israel so that Israel couldn't continue working in the southern part against Judah. So they had to go take care of the problems up there, which it was a strategic move. And Ben-Hadad was perfectly willing to do that, because now he gets all the storehouses that Baasha had built, and he gets to enrich his coffers more. So this is the kind of gains that were going on in this area. And what was the difficulty? What was the problem with where the money came from? He took it from the temple. Yeah. So whose money was it? It wasn't his, that's for sure. It was God's. Remember when I'm trying to remember. It was. I'm drawing a blank. It's in the book of Daniel, when they were in captivity, and they were having. This is when the king had the writing on the wall. Remember, he's having a great party, and what did he do to have things for the party? He took some of the vessels that he got from the temple, or they got from the temple, and was using them in this party and toasting false gods and all kinds of things. This is when the fall of Babylon came. And God doesn't take lightly to his things being used inappropriately. And so we have a situation here. It's not just that. In fact, we'll see the rebuke here. It's not just the fact that he used the temple money. It's actually not even really discussed, I don't think, unless I missed it. But the point is that he's putting his trust in the money. He's putting his trust in someone else to hire them to do what God was going to do already. So it says, at that time, Hanani the seer came to Asa, king of Judah, in verse 7, and said to him, Because you have relied on the king of Assyria and have not relied on the Lord your God, therefore the army of the king of Syria has escaped from your hand. Were the Ethiopians and the Lubim not a huge army with very many chariots and horsemen? Yet because you relied on the Lord, he delivered them into your hand. So he brings up the Ethiopians. I guarantee you the Ethiopians had a lot more people in their army than the Israelites, or more than likely had a lot more. And he wasn't worried about it. So he was, in his younger days, he was not concerned with that many people. He knew God would take care of them. And here we have a little city that's being built up, and he panics and starts wheeling and dealing, right? He's trusting in another king. Had God ever had any of the kings interact with other people to help bring in protection and help protect the people? Yeah, he had. Yeah. So it's not the fact that he's getting someone else to help. It's the fact that God didn't tell him to have someone else help, right? He wasn't following what God wanted. And because of that, he was trusting in his own self and trusting in these other people and wasn't really turning to God to ask for help. He didn't think to say, here's a situation. Can you please help me? That's a big deal. And that's the reason that all of the kings had downfalls. Even going back to David, his downfall was he was doing things that God didn't tell him to do, or not doing things that God did tell him to do. And that's where it all starts, and it's just the fall that comes from there. All right, so here are the consequences of that. In verse 9, it says, "The eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him. And this you have done foolishly. Therefore, from now on you shall have wars." Then Asa was angry with the seer and put him in prison, for he was enraged at him because of this. And Asa oppressed some of the people at that time. He just made things even worse, didn't he, by imprisoning the man of God. And so note the acts of Asa, first and last, are indeed written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa became diseased in his feet, and his malady was severe. Yet in his disease he did not seek the Lord, but the physicians. All right. Again, this is not about seeking help. It's not wrong to seek physicians. What was the problem with Asa? He wasn't seeking God. He wasn't seeking God's help. So if I'm seeking physicians and I never bother to pray to God to ask for help in the situation that I'm in, there's a problem there, isn't there? And it's not the physicians who are going to help. I mean, how many times have we been to the doctor and the doctor really can't? They have all the answers, but none of the answers work. It happens all the time. Well, I'm not suggesting that if you had prayed to God, that would have been different, but we're seeking help from God, and he should be first. And sometimes he's last one that we go to. Hard to say. I think the pride is pretty obvious that it's there. But that would have been at least a catalyst for him falling. But it could have been that he's, you get kind of comfortable with things and you think, well, here are some ideas. I've learned for 40 years, this is what I've been doing. I know how to handle this. No big deal. It may be that, something like that. But I don't know. That's a really good question. Well, let's think about this, some application ideas. This is really hard for us to find application because none of us are kings and we don't have kings, but there's still things that we can do. So from the political or there's two basic powers that we can see in our culture, the politics and the domestic, which is we're going to cover on Wednesday. These, I don't mean just the home, but the civilization and part of our governance that relates to how we interact as just normal people outside of politics. Those two things are very important, and we see the political part of it in here. So I want to suggest that we can make an impact on our culture around us by just thinking of ways that we can have influence on people around us. We have to start somewhere, right? And the place that we start is here. And when we look at ourselves and we have our thinking straight, we start expanding our circle of influence and trying to help other people. How do we help? In what ways do we help other people? I mean, take your pick. There's so many problems in our society, aren't there? And there's so many problems that have as a basis, a foundation of sin and degradation that comes because of sin. So it's almost at a point where you can't help but stumble on somewhere you can help somebody do something. And so what do? Well, obviously we want to teach them the gospel, but when we are reaching people in the community who don't want to hear the gospel, we don't have a lot of options, do we? We can do two things. We can continue to tell them what they don't want to hear, which means they're going to avoid us, or we can find other ways to get into their lives to help them. So we serve people and we show love to people and we help people where they are, and while we're doing that, we're bringing them closer to God by teaching them principles that God has always had in His Word. That's a strategy, and it takes a long time, but it's, we might find those people here and there who are looking for God. And those are the times we just throw up our hands and celebrate, right? But there are not a whole lot of people looking right now. So that tells me that we're in a time of planting seed. And you plant seeds by getting to people's hearts. And when you get to their heart, you can plant the seed that's there and let it grow and germinate and grow. It's really the only choices we have. Or the third option is to just pull back and say, well, I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not going to help. But we want to make an impact on society. That's one of the reasons we're Christians. It's one of the reasons we're following God. All right, so I see everybody gathering in the back, so that means we're done. So thank you for your participation.